In 1992, the now acclaimed director Roland Emmerich, alongside action superstars Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, created Universal Soldier, a movie that was maybe underappreciated in the golden age of action films, but nonetheless a highlight in all of their careers. We're big fans here at JoBlo. Regardless, financial issues loom for the studio that created it. This resulted in rights being sold and two mostly horrendous television shows being released on Showtime, starring Gary Busey and Burt Reynolds of all people. 7 years later, in 1999, the franchise would attempt its big screen comeback, with the legendary Jean-Claude Van Damme desperate for a career win, on a project that no director seemed willing to touch. Would the result be a resurrection of not only the franchise, but its leading man's once unstoppable career, or one of the final nails in the coffin of both of their big screen futures? This is What the Fuck Happened to Universal Soldier: The Return. Though moderately successful, it wasn't long after the release of the original Universal Soldier that Carolco Pictures went bankrupt. Though the company had several successful action hits such as Cliffhanger and Total Recall, years of losing money due to financial setbacks, such as the ill-fated Cutthroat Island, left the studio in shambles. In the shakeup, the television rights to Universal Soldier were sold, resulting in two straight-to-TV sequels in the franchise: Universal Soldier 2: Brothers in Arms and Universal Soldier 3: Unfinished Business. The quality of both of these films were rather forgettable, and the entire time Universal Soldier producer Craig Baumgarten was itching to give the franchise the legit sequel that it deserved. The rights eventually made their way to Baumgarten Profit Entertainment, alongside TriStar Pictures, who distributed the first film, as well as Sony Pictures Entertainment. Jean-Claude Van Damme was no doubt looking to return to box office domination after some rough outings with films like Maximum Risk and the Dennis Rodman team-up Double Team. It seemed as if a sequel to one of his classic films could be the solution. Unfortunately, the muscles from Brussels had burned a lot of bridges at this point in his career, making a return to possible franchises like Time Cop unlikely. However, a multi-picture deal with Sony had the studio willing to take a chance on the actor once more, despite the previous box office disappointments, such as the very underrated Sudden Death. They greenlit a Universal Soldier theatrical sequel with one caveat: the film had to remain under a budget of $35 million. A script for an original project written by Another 48 Hours and later Darkness Falls writer John Fasano was found and adapted into a sequel for the franchise, much in the same way that 10 Cloverfield Lane had been changed to fit its respective franchise years later. This, alongside the help of The Return's original director William Malone. Malone secured the job on the sequel after his work on horror projects such as Tales from the Crypt and the Freddy Krueger television series Freddy's Nightmares. He had hoped to create a more reserved, horror-laden sequel to push the franchise forward. Unfortunately, JCVD was keen to make the same type of high-flying, action-packed film that his audience perhaps expected of him, even despite the film's modest budget. The impasse ultimately led to Malone leaving the project and instead going to work on the surprisingly entertaining horror remake House on Haunted Hill instead. With the pre-production process taking longer than expected, the studio reached out to multiple other directors, including Roland Emmerich, with none of them showing interest in the project. This led them to Mel Gibson's longtime stunt double and first-time director Mick Rogers. Rogers had a history in action films due to his successful stunt career, working on films such as Braveheart and Lethal Weapon, but had no experience directing whatsoever. In the final script, the events of The Return would predictably ignore the events of the two previous sequels, instead directly following up the original film. We're now 15 years past the events of the original, and Luke Devereaux has now been converted back into a normal human being. You just kind of have to ignore the fact that this somehow means the Unisol program basically solved the issue of human death, and go with it. Not to mention, Devereaux is now working for the very company that put him through hell, helping to refine the new generation of Unisols. The company's moral focus is no doubt much more developed, and they're now solely focused on reducing human casualties of war with their updated breed of soldiers. All this with the help of a futuristic AI program known as Seth, connected to each of the Unisols via neural implants. Seth can do everything from control the Unisouls to babysit Devereaux's daughter. When the budget cuts promise to shut down the program entirely, Seth picks up on the betrayal and goes full-blown Skynet. The company computer unleashes a group of Unisouls to do its bidding, attempting to kill Devereaux, as he's the only one left alive with the code that can shut down its system. All this leads to Devereaux surviving the attack of a group of new and improved Unisouls while trying to keep his daughter alive, alongside his new and attractive reporter friend caught in the crossfire. At one point, Devereaux drops the honestly pretty cool line that the only way is to blow them
up and hope the pieces don't keep fighting us.
Meanwhile, Seth has managed to put his supercomputer essence into the brain of the most dangerous of all the Unisouls, a body inhabited by none other than actor Michael J. White. Alongside physical specimens JCVD and Michael J. White, the film casts wrestler Bill Goldberg as the most morally bankrupt Unisoul, Romeo, ironically in a role that they originally had Stone Cold Steve Austin in mind for. Though Goldberg, who the director called an Energizer Bunny on steroids, was over the top and honestly corny throughout, physically he was a fun and formidable physical opponent for Van Damme, who always thrived as the underdog. The love interest, reporter Aaron Walker, is played by Heidi Shans, but was originally intended as a return of Ali Walker, who left the project early on due to other scheduled commitments. They instead killed her character off between films, leaving Devereaux as a single parent to their daughter. Terminator 2's Todd, actor Xander Berkeley, plays one of the good guy geniuses responsible for the creation of Seth, who's dispatched a little too early in the film. RoboCop 3 and Super Troopers actor, the late Daniel Von Bargen, plays an army general trying to help stop Seth. Character actor Brett Hinckley rounds out the cast as a cartoonish and over-the-top guy-in-the-chair cyberpunk who listens to Gwar and helps Seth find his human form while eating cereal with a giant wooden spoon. The ambitious script for The Return notwithstanding, the film is merely an action-packed science fiction fight movie with various metal songs blasting off in the background. Not only was Goldberg's WCW entrance song Crush 'Em by Megadeth featured at the wrestler's request, but so were songs from everyone from Static X to Anthrax. In another metal tie-in, the Texas-filmed flick even featured a strip club called The Clubhouse, which was, in real life, owned by Pantera's Vinnie Paul and Dimebag Darrell. We're not talking Citizen Kane by any means, but Universal Soldier: The Return still makes for a non-stop action roller coaster with a plethora of fun fight scenes. The now human Devereaux has to repeatedly take on a semi-scary, mostly cheesy Goldberg, who is constantly resurrecting and appearing around a corner in pure Michael Myers fashion.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
With the persistence of a Terminator, his prize, a final showdown with Seth's ultimate Unisoul in Michael J. White, where they repeatedly throw each other through a buffet of glass structures. Like it's a goddamn fun house. The film walks a thin line between forgettable straight-to-video action fare and fun 90s action movie with no fat left on the bone. Jean-Claude Van Damme seemed healthy, in prime physical shape, and far more committed than in recent films such as Street Fighter. During promotion, he even mentioned that he had been training hard for a film that required him to be quick and in good shape for copious amounts of action scenes within. Regardless, a lengthy pre-production and reshoots ended up ballooning the budget to around $40 million, and disastrous test screenings led the studio to take control of its edit. All told, The Return ended up with a running time of only an hour and 23 minutes. In the hope that more screenings would provide a better box office return, this proved to be an unsuccessful endeavor. Universal Soldier: The Return would finally release domestically on August 20th, 1999, and the results were dismal. The movie would only make just over $10 million domestically, with less than $3 million international. The reviews were even worse. As of today, The Return sits at a measly 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with a not much better audience score of 24%. Reviews were savage and called the film, perhaps unfairly, idiotic, derivative, mind-numbing, and disappointing. The unfortunate result of all of this for our beloved Jean-Claude Van Damme was equally hurtful. Apart from a voice acting role in 2011's Kung Fu Panda 2, the actor wouldn't be seen on a big screen again until 2012's The Expendables 2. in a rare villain role where he's pitted against Sylvester Stallone. Though that movie did end in a pretty cool final fight scene between the two action legends. Villain Michael J. White isn't exactly fond in his recollection of the film either. In a long after-the-fact interview, the martial arts actor stated that he remembers the movie being dumb as hell and one of the worst movies he's been in throughout the entirety of his career, which, to be fair, is saying a lot. Jean-Claude at least felt positively about it at the time, saying he felt that The Return was all in all a good movie, with a lot of roller coaster-esque action sequences, that it featured actors in prime physical condition resulting in believable fight sequences. In reality, director Mick Rogers would never direct another film. The subsequent sequel a decade later, Universal Soldier Regeneration, also starring Van Damme and bringing back Dolph Lundgren, would again cut this film out of franchise canon, deeming itself a direct sequel to the original. Though Universal Soldier: The Return turned out to be a disappointment both financially and critically, it might be fair to say that it's a little better than given credit for. Sure, there are some questionable choices, dialogue, and acting moments. No doubt some bargain bin, music video quality cheese sprinkled throughout its brisk running time, but it also features a script with some interesting ideas about the Unisol program being led by a malicious AI-powered computer. Most importantly, it's a fun, turn-your-brain-off action movie with a ton of go-for-it action sequences and extended fight scenes. Universal Soldier: The Return is at its best a fun throwback to the action days of old, and undoubtedly a far better entry in the franchise than the two television films that preceded it, and most importantly, long live Jean-Claude Van Damme. And that is what the fuck happened to Universal Soldier: The Return.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.